Hello and welcome to the sixth video for Unit 2 Cognition. This video will be talking about retrieving memories. We've already talked about encoding memories, then storing memories, and now we need to talk about retrieving memories. By the end of this video, you should be able to answer the following question. How do memory retrieval processes get information out of memory? So before we can get into how things come out of memory, we first need to talk about what retrieval is. So retrieval is purely the getting of information out of our long-term memory and using it. This is bringing that information back up into working memory to be able to use and then compare to the new information we're getting in to make decisions about the world. We use what are called retrieval cues to help us bring out the correct memory from long-term storage. Retrieval cues are stimuli that help people get that information from long-term memory. Think of these like search terms that you would use when you put into Google or your email when you're trying to find a particular email. These are clues that help you find the correct memory. So let's talk about the different types of retrieval. We have two different types. The first is recognition. Recognition is our ability to identify something from a list of options. So multiple choice tests are an example of recognition retrieval. This is our ability to see the correct answer and know that that is what we're looking for. Recall, on the other hand, is like fill in the blank tests. This is where you are just pulling the information out and writing it down. Relearning is a concept in psychology that refers to the process of learning information again after it's been forgotten. Research by Ebbinghaus showed that relearning is often faster than the initial learning, highlighting that some memory traces remain even when we can't recall the information. This is quantified through the savings score, which measures how quickly we can relearn material. Overall, relearning underscores the resilience of our memory, that even though we might not be consciously aware that we have some information stored in long-term memory, because it goes faster the second time around, we know that our memory retains some information. The next concept we're going to talk about is priming. Now, we've talked about this a little bit already, but I'd like to talk about it again. If I show you this picture and then ask you to spell the word bear, you are going to spell the word B-E-A-R and not B-A-R-E. While both of these spellings are correct, I have primed you to spell it a certain way. Why? Because I've given you a small piece of information to hold on to. Priming is the procedure of providing cues that stimulate memories without the awareness of the connection between the cue and the retrieved memory. Often, this is referred to as memoryless memory because it's done without our conscious awareness, yet it predisposes us to interpret or recall information in a certain way. The next thing we're going to talk about is context effects. Context effects refer to the influence of external factors or the surrounding environment on how we perceive, remember, and interpret information. There are a few different types of context effects we're going to talk about. Context-dependent memory is the idea that information is optimally remembered when it's recalled in the same place in which it was initially learned. For example, if I really wanted you to do the best you could possibly do on the AP exam, we would spend all of our time in the room that you're going to take the AP exam because you're able to use your surroundings as kind of those retrieval cues to bring information back to the forefront. State-dependent memory is when memory retrieval is most efficient when an individual is in the same state of consciousness as they were when the memory was formed. So if you're really tired each day you come to our class, your recall will be better on the test day if you're tired. The same thing applies to intoxication. If someone is intoxicated while learning someone's phone number, for instance, then they will have trouble recalling it when they're sober because their conscious state is altered. Mood congruent memory is our tendency to recall experiences that are consistent with one's current mood. So if you're happy or in a good mood, you're more likely to recall happy or positive events, while a bad mood will bring about sad or negative memories. The testing effect is a finding that taking a test on previously studied material actually leads to better retention than restudying that material for the same amount of time. So one of the things that I encourage you to do as we go throughout the year is to create tests for yourself, practice tests, using multiple choice questions to help you study rather than just looking over your notes or doing vocab flashcards. If you actually quiz yourself, you're going to encourage yourself to retain information better. Let's talk about some other effects on memory. The first is the next in line effect. And the next in line effect is when your recall is better for what other people say, but poor for a person just before you in line. Think about when you have to read aloud in class. You're so worried about what you're going to do that you aren't really paying attention to what the person before you said. This is because your focus is on preparing yourself to read next and not on what the person right in front of you is doing. The next thing we should talk about is the spacing effect. And this is the idea that we retain information better when our rehearsal is distributed over time. Studies have shown that if you study a little bit each night, you'll remember more than if you cram the night before a test. This has been told to students forever, yet they still are cramming. So we encourage you to spend just a little bit of time looking at your notes every single night rather than spending 4 hours the night before. Finally, the serial positioning effect. The serial positioning effect is when your recall is better for the first and last items of a list, but poor for the middle items. For example, how many US presidents can you name? Are you better at remembering the first few presidents and the last few? And probably a few outliers. The serial positioning effect allows you to remember those first few presidents and the last few presidents rather than those presidents in the middle.